Welcome back to another feedback session. This time around we have two submissions from Alphabet Spaghetti. We have a Hollow Knight illustration and we have a cool monster, I would say. Let's start with the Hollow Knight. First of all, I would say it looks great. The composition looks really nice to me, and I like that the Hollow Knight is in the center and you have a nice contrast between the foreground and the background, essentially where all of this light is happening. So it's quite a nice illustration, I would say. I think there are maybe a couple of things I would like to point out, and one of those will also be conveyed to this image as well. Let's start with the other thing I would say, and that would be the cast shadow. Since the lighting here is so strong, I would say it would be really nice effect if we could add some cast shadow for the Hollow Knight. So I'm just going to select him, copy paste him, flip him vertically, and just connect him here at the legs. Then I will use the black color simply to create the cast shadow. And that's all there is when it comes to the cast shadow. The next thing I would say would be the ground. Do you see how the ground itself has this curvature? While it certainly looks nice, if you ask me, when it comes to the overall energy of the image, in a way that if we go from the middle, it has this nice flow of energy towards the middle, if you will. However, as an alternative, I would like to show you what can also be done, and that is keeping everything completely straight. So if I take this color like this, and I will also do this on the other side, and I will simply also draw a little bit of this shadow tone here as well. And let's do the same thing on the other side. I'll speed this up. Okay, I think this should look fine. So if you compare the before and after, especially here in the preview, hopefully you can see how it's a bit more solid. Now, I didn't go and refine the shapes, but hopefully you can see the difference. Now, the last thing I would say that is within this image, and it also connects to the second image, would be single pixel dots. Overall, this style looks very painterly. And when I say a painterly style, by that I mean that you are using brushes which are larger than 1 pixel. So here, when we choose the brush size, you are essentially using larger brushes than 1 pixel. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, especially when you are simply making illustrations. But I would say that if you are using such big brushes, either be consistent with them, so keep focusing on larger brushes, though personally I like to see that the final details are made with 1 pixel brushes. For example, here on the Hollow Knight, I can specifically see that this single pixel right here, you were very purposeful of it. You were very conscious on how you placed it, especially this one as well. So things like that. Here as well, I can also see that you wanted to create this shape of this cloud and define it a bit more nicely. However, on some places, I'm not really sure that I see that intention. For example, here in the middle, these pixels, stray pixels in the shadow tone, I'm not sure what their purpose is, to be honest. They look kind of lost, a bit unintentional. So I would say clean those up. And this will also help with keeping the cohesion of the style, meaning that the style will keep its painterly look, so to speak. And if you want, you can also bring this brighter tone, you can also bring it up a little bit. Again, I'm going to be using larger paint brushes, and I will occasionally bring these up a little bit. I think this one might be a bit too large, so perhaps like that, or even like this. Okay, so now when I look here in the middle, also here as well, I mean, I can go over this entire image and just try to find these stray pixels, if you will. But overall, I think this looks really nice. So here's the before and after. It's not a big difference at all, because I think the illustration looks quite nice by itself. Let's move on to the next image. Okay, so in this image, I would say that we have the same, I wouldn't say issue, but the same thing that we had with the last image, and that would be that I don't feel that intention of single pixels everywhere. For example, here on the eye, I can see you have spent quite a good amount of time on creating this iris and details in the eye, and it looks beautiful if you ask me. Now this looks amazing. And when I look on the rest of this monstrosity, I would say that I don't see that everywhere. For example, here, these shapes aren't defined as well. It's like you have stopped your brush on 2 pixels of size. So essentially using this brush and like that, and basically doing that. It's like you have stopped on some places, defining the pixels, defining the shapes and details on 1 pixel size. And in some places, again, they're a bit unintentional. It's a bit undefined. For example, these shapes over here, they're a bit messy, I would say. The shape isn't shaded and defined as well as it could be. Define the shadows and define the light portions of a shape a bit more strongly. Be more confident in what is in the shadow and what is in the light. For example, let's take this part of the jaw over here. We can see this portion is in the shadow and this portion is in the light. Yet, it's not high enough of a contrast for shadow tone, if you ask me. Especially when you are using the light tone here in the shadow. Now, this is a common technique where you are using some tones which are in the light that you are also using in the shadow. But in this case, I would say simply define the shadowed portion with shadow tones. So pick few colors which are going to be for the shadow and keep them in the shadow and keep some in the light. And that's all there is. Here as well, we can place this in the shadow. And now if we look at this side of the jaw, you can see it's a bit more clearly defined. So here's the before and here's the after. I think it looks a bit more defined. Now let's go and talk about the last point, and that would be the contrast between the light and shadow portions. And I think this would be a bit important when it comes to this specific image, because since this is the size of the average human, this is enormous. And if I were to use this in a game, it's definitely going to be a horror game or some kind of a doom game, who knows. So I'll create a background, and the background will be very dark. But before I show you the effect, I would say push the shadows a bit darker. So let's create the shadows. I'll turn off the contiguous. So this is the one shadow tone, this is the second shadow tone. So the contrast is quite a bit higher than it was before. And I'm going to darken the lighter portions just a little bit. Okay, so now we have a lot stronger contrast between the shadows and the lights. Let's see what happens if we create this in an environment like a horror game. So I'll create a nice dark blue color. And now look at the comparison. So this is the before and this is after. Since we have a lot stronger contrast between the shadow and light tones, it looks way more scarier. It looks more menacing. I think it's a really nice effect. As a last portion of this feedback, I would say spend a little bit more time on this illustration simply to clean up the rough edges. So for example, do you see how your eye is so nicely defined? Such nice, not beautiful details, I have to say. And then this place over here, it looks a bit undefined. So spend a little bit more time. So for example, if I look at this portion here as a straight line, you'll notice that these are jaggeds, or rather they would be jaggeds. So spend a little bit of time and keep refining the image on some places, and I think you'll be good to go. Now this is a process that will probably take me at least 15 minutes to clean up everything, but I think you're more than capable of doing that considering what I've seen in your illustrations previously. So yeah, I think you did a great job. I like the illustration, I like the monster, and that's all for today. I hope these couple of tips helped you out, and just remember, relax, enjoy drawing pixel art, enjoy your life, and have fun.